Well, everybody watching, thanks for joining us today. I have a very special guest. For those of you who don't know who I'm Amanda Patterson. I am the admin of the Facebook group, My Private Practice Tribe. If you're a therapist and you haven't joined, I invite you to join us. We are a large community of therapists who love to connect and share things about being in private practice and being a therapist. I also have a group practice called Caring Therapists of Broward in Pembroke Pines, Florida, which is sort of between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. And today I have with us Nancy Ryan, and she is the owner of Relationship Therapy Center, and she comes to us from California. Welcome,
Hi.
Nancy.
Hi, Amanda. So good to be here. Yeah, it's early in California.
I was thinking about that when I saw the time. I'm like, oh, she's an early riser, so this works out for me. I probably need to be mindful of some of my times with people from across the country.
Yeah, well, we get the opportunity to say yes or no, so it's on us.
Yes, it's great. I'm so glad you said yes. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be talking today about Nancy's niche of couples counseling and how she built up her group practice from starting as a solopreneur and then going into having a really solid group practice that's niched around couples counseling. So Nancy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, when I was in school, I always knew I wanted to be in private practice. We had the opportunity in one of our classes to have somebody come in from the county and somebody come in from private practice. And for me, that was just the journey. I knew it. And so I kept hearing in the marketing circles to niche. And so I have somebody in my family with bipolar disorder. And so I started with that. It was, how to help kids with bipolar disorder, and tried that, launched that. It didn't really work and go anywhere. And so I kept trying different niches, and I knew that to be successful in private practice that I had to niche. And when I was finishing up my internship, it was in a private practice, and I started getting some couples. And obviously a lot of therapists are like, no couples, I can't do it. It's because we don't always get a lot of training in our schooling on what to do with couples. And so as soon as I started having couples in my sessions, I knew I kind of liked it. I liked the dynamic of managing the room. And that kind of comes from some of my corporate background, I guess. And so I started with John Gottman's book for couples, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, I think it's called. And I just started using some of those interventions, and I created my own conversation starters so that I could send people out on dates. And so I just dug into all the learning. And pretty soon my referral base started building, and I did everything grassroots. I had a website, but I did public speaking. I talked to moms groups, and I would talk to them about communication and listening and boundaries. And slowly but surely, my practice within 2 years was full. And a lot of couples, I do see individuals, and I think that's the thing that people are so afraid of niching. It's like, well, I don't want my whole practice to be all couples, but that's not the case. It's probably 50-50 for me, but all my marketing goes towards couples and relationships.
I think that's amazing that you were able to build up such a successful private practice in 2 years, really from a grassroots effort. I know that there are 2 ways a lot of people basically build their practices, either going grassroots or initially buying like a program or something to follow. And I think both are respectable. And I think people do things for whatever reasons, like their own personal reasons. I'm a grassroots kind of person. That's how I built my practice. And so I can totally relate to what that looks like.
Yeah.
What I find with couples counseling, and I would like for you to speak about this, or people who provide couples counseling, is I think it's the bias of the therapist, but I think it's important that we mostly refer to people who are either Gottman trained or EFT or have some kind of training in couples counseling. Can you talk about that and maybe the importance of that?
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many couples come into my session and they, and I'll revert back there, but some of the statements I hear is, oh, geez, we went to therapy before and we just fought in session and we left and it was worse. And I always think it's like, if we don't have the tools to help them, it's a very different dynamic than individual counseling. And so can they get angry and frustrated in session? You bet, but it's not about arguing. It's learning how to do conflict correctly. And so immediately, once I got full, I went, okay, I need more and more training. And so in 1 year, I think this was 2017, I took Gottman level 1 and 2 and got some hands-on practice. And it's interesting because I'm in the Sacramento, California area, and there's so much focus on EFT here. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's the one to do. And for me, I think it's got some great concepts, but I'm a little bit of a rebel, and I'm like, well, if it's all EFT, I'll go Gottman, right?
I love that about you, Nancy. That's awesome.
And Gottman really resonated with me because there's so many hands-on tools. And the position that I think what a couple people have told me before is, well, I went EFT because it's more emotion focused, and Gottman is more like scientific or communication focused. And that's a myth. I have people that are expressing emotions a ton and working on some deeper core attachment issues and all that through the Gottman principles. So that's something. But this last January, I took the Gottman level 3, and I'm on the track for certification. And because that's just so amazing, there's not really any workshops or intensives or anything like that in the Sacramento area. And I have actually people that will fly up to see the Gottmans and do their art and science of love, and then come back and look for a Gottman therapist. And so I'm probably 1 out of 3 or 4 in the Sacramento area. So that was a huge thing. So yeah, training is vitally important.
I think that what you just brought up is really important, that while one may be more popular in your area, like whether, again, it's mostly Gottman and EFT that I see people do trainings with, but I know that there are other ones. And so I think it's maybe important if everybody in your area is Gottman trained, maybe you do EFT or vice versa. So then it brings more diversity into that area in terms
Absolutely. And both of those are searched. Yeah.
How do you do specific marketing around couples? Like, what does that look like? So those people out there that are interested in doing this, teach us all of your ways, Nancy.
So besides the grassroots marketing that I did, as I started bringing on clinicians, and we can go back to that, I started really investing a lot more in Google Ads and marketing, so that all my keywords are related to trust issues, communication, infidelity, the things that couples come to counseling for. So I do run some Google Ads that are based right around that. One of the things I just tried the other day was I just joined a chamber in one of my locations areas, and I related having problems in relationships affecting your business. And so I put an email blast out there that I said, could your relationship success affect your business success? And I marketed it all around there because, when people are struggling with their relationships, they're not functioning very well at work. And so that tie-in went really well. A lot of the times I just became known. So I get a lot of my work via referrals. So I have to tell you something. I told you we were in Hawaii last week, and my girlfriend does couples counseling, and she in Sacramento with somebody else. Obviously I can't counsel her. And so she emailed her couples counselor and says, I've heard about this Gottman thing. Do you know anything about that? And she said, well, no, here's the link, but I've heard Nancy Ryan's really great. So
wow.
She goes, the Nancy Ryan? I was like, so it's a matter of time and building up the reputation. So I do have therapists that will refer over to me as well when they're full. So, and
so now that you're full and you've got a reputation, you decided to bring on other clinicians that specialize in couples counseling?
Yeah, so that was tricky because I decided to bring on clinicians because I needed help, and I got tired of, I refer out to people that have certain specialties. I don't have anyone that does EMDR in my practice, and so I refer outside. But I started thinking, I've been watching people build up any kind of passive income, or I was like, what happens when I'm not in the seat? You know, what happens if I get sick or can't do this anymore? And so I hired my first clinician, and she liked doing couples. She liked doing really high conflict, like court ordered couples. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not me. So let's bring her on. But as I'm bringing people in, it was really difficult to find people that are already trained. And so what I did was find people that are interested in working with couples and send them through the Gottman training. So that's become my focus. Is I'll bring someone on that has good, you know, fits the vibe of me and my culture, and tell them that they'll be going through training. And so I have it kind of staggered in as part of their benefits, and then they have to stay with me for a certain amount of time to kind of pay off the training. But my goal is to be the place to go for couples in the Sacramento area.
The relationship therapy center.
Yeah.
In Sacramento. That would make so much sense. I think that's so wonderful, but I think that that's something that's needed in a lot of areas, especially around couples counseling. So I'll be brutally honest and vulnerable here. Sure, in grad school we had a couples and family therapy class,
systems.
Right? Yep. So I'm in LMHC, so we had one class. I never had any training. I decided to start a private practice with no intention of doing any couples work, right? And so I'm like, I'm not going to do any couples work, but eventually couples just landed on my couch, right? It happened that way, and I didn't really know much, right? And so I did individual counseling as a couple, right? Did a lot of reflective listening and skill building, and I started to read books and do small things, and then I took the EFT training, which I did the externship. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, with EFT, the first training is a 4-day externship, and they go through like the whole model basically. And so I really enjoy the EFT model because I come from an attachment perspective in terms of the types of counseling that I do. So I really like that, but I also like the Gottman work because I like that. I think a lot of couples come in and they want skills. They don't necessarily want those like high level concepts. Like they're like, yeah, I know I'm a distancer and I know I'm the pursuer, but like, what does that look like when we're at dinner? What does that look like? And that's actually some of the feedback I've gotten just personally about some of the model that I use. Like they're like, great, you helped us understand our pattern and give us more. And so I think that's where like those, I really think people can do Gottman and EFT together. There are some other, I went to a therapist, not for couples, but for individual who did Imago, right? And I loved Imago because I learned a lot about needs, right? The needs we have and where they come from childhood. And that's what Imago does. We kind of like Freudian, like you marry your mother, you marry your father kind of thing. And so it's really funny, but it was good because then it taught me like to look for my needs and look for my needs in a partner. So I think that a lot of these models, just like with individual therapy, though we might be trained in one specific model, it's really, we do a lot of eclectic work sometimes.
Absolutely. And pull from a lot of different things. I pull in for couples love languages, and I do the Kiersey
love languages. Yes.
Yes. And I pull in the Kiersey temperament sorter, which is, it will model the Myers-Briggs. And so I talk to people about that. I pull in a lot of different things, and absolutely, once I finish certification with Gottman, there's a part of me, I'm an information junkie, but part of me that wants to do the EFT training as well. But we'll see where we're at that time.
You'll probably like being an information junkie, and knowing you'd probably really enjoy just having, the basis of it. So
absolutely.
If somebody wants to contact you and connect with you, and so Nancy's got a great website. Nancy inspired me to do my own AdWords campaign, similar to how she's doing hers. And so I went to her website and just kind of perused and took in, we do different work. So our websites would look very different, but I saw kind of the model that she's doing, and it's great. How can somebody get in contact with you?
Okay, well, it's so funny because I'm working with that same organization to reroute my domain name. So let me share this with you really quick. I was told my website is counselinginsacramento.com. And when I moved to the group practice, somebody said, your website's been up for 6 years. It's got a lot of traction. Don't change the domain. So I have redirects. And the company I'm working with said, oh no, we can redirect you for therelationshiptherapycenter.com. And so I'm like, all right, let's do that. So for now it's counselinginsacramento.com, but that will still redirect when I change the domain name. And so all my contact information is on there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or help anyone along the way.
So we'll be putting your information in the show notes so anybody can find that, either if they're watching on YouTube or catching this like in another, on my blog post or something, so that you can get in touch with Nancy. We actually met, we were in a mastermind together for 1 year with Joe Sanak from Practice of the Practice. And we met over this summer. And, I was thinking about it. We're going to see each other in October. And so I'm very excited about that. So Nancy and I are both presenting at Killing It Camp with Joe Sanak. I will put that in the show notes too, in case anybody is looking to, if you want to come and meet either of us, or you want to learn some strategies to build your private practice. I'll be speaking about social media, and Nancy will be speaking about money matters.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you,
Nancy. Get out of your own way.
Yes. I'm
Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Thanks for being on. I also wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, Therapy Notes. If you are looking to switch your electronic health record, or you're still doing pencil and paper, no judgment, but if you're looking to get into the 21st century and get an electronic health record, I highly recommend Therapy Notes. You can check them out at therapynotes.com. And if you use the promo code Amanda, you get 2 months free. So you can check out how their notes templates are, how they interface, appointment reminders, treatment plans, initial paperwork, all of that good stuff. And again, that's therapynotes.com. And a special thank you. And thank you, Nancy. I look forward to seeing you in October.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Amanda, for having me.